Now, if you're a regular viewer to this programme, you will know that one of my bugbears is public sector officials wasting your money, my money. Yeah, I'm talking about our taxpayers' money. I really cannot bear it. And every week, you might have noticed, I sit down with the Taxpayers Alliance and look at public money and how it's being spent/wasted. This week, I want to focus on what people call the golden goodbyes. Basically, senior employees at local authorities are receiving higher exit packages, with new figures showing an increase in the mean average package over the last year. Whilst the total number of exit payments awarded has fallen, the value of the payments given have increased. So joining me now is John O'Connell from the Taxpayers Alliance. John, good evening and welcome to you again.
Thank you for having me.
Right, just explain very briefly to my viewers, what is a golden goodbye? It sounds great, I want one.
So it's usually made up of redundancies or ex gratia payments and things like that, but the vast majority of it is redundancies, and we've had a look at the figures.
Oh no, I don't want one then. I don't want to be made redundant just yet.
Well, it depends. If you get one of the packages that are available in the public sector, you might. But
right.
You know, we've had a look at the figures from the Ministry of Housing, Communities and Local Government, and the value of exit payments made by local authorities last year was £230 million of taxpayers' money. The previous year, it was just over £300 million. So the total value has gone down, but the average payment's gone up by about £4,000 from 91 to 95,000 for the most senior redundancy.
So nearly 100 grand being paid to people because they've been made redundant. Wow.
Yeah, absolutely.
And how does that compare, though, to, I mean, it might be very difficult to make the comparison, but to the private sector?
Well, the payments are very generous, and what we know is that in 2016, the government passed a law in the Enterprise Act which said that there was going to be a cap of £95,000. Of course, the secondary legislation hasn't yet, or didn't go through for about 4 or 5 years, eventually came through, and then the government have paused it again. So the six-figure payouts still happen, and most sort of famously, I suppose, was Mark Sedwell, the Cabinet Secretary, in receipt of £250,000. There was a payout, a redundancy payout of a local authority official in 2019-20 of £400,000.
Wow.
So the figures are staggering.
And then am I right in thinking that once you've got this large chunk of money, you can then just go back into another job or go into another job, or is there a time frame? How does it work?
It has happened in the past where somebody has received quite a big payout and then moved to another council, moved to another quango. We've seen those examples in the past for sure. So, in receipt of a big salary, big payout, straight onto another job somewhere else in the public sector.
And I always, I've noticed as well, people getting so-called early retirement payments from the public sector and then going straight into, or very quickly into, a public sector job as well, which has always blown my mind. But let's talk about councils, and Slough Council in particular, because I was just showing you viewers there all these trendy and swanky offices, and they didn't belong to, a slick tech firm. No, they belong to Slough Council. What's going on there?
Yeah, Slough bought...
This is them look?
Yeah, indeed. And Slough bought a new office building for around £40 million, spent about £8.5 million on the refurb, including £30,000 on fake plants.
How much on fake plants?
£30,000.
£30,000 on fake plants?
Indeed. So what we're seeing there is a very, very expensive relocation and redecoration. And the council have been under financial pressure, and they've gone the equivalent of bust earlier this week.
And Tom Buick, you're still with me. You used to be a councillor, didn't you? When you see examples of these kind of swanky offices and you hear about councils going bust, does this child do believe that too much money is wasted? Is that your experience? Am I being unfair?
There's no doubt, and we just heard in the earlier discussion, going back to 2015 when the Enterprise Act was passed. I was a councillor at the time, and a very senior official within my local authority not only walked off with a six-figure package, but it only came to light after they'd walked away with that package that just 4 years earlier, another local authority, they'd also had a six-figure payout, and they went on to work in another local authority. So I think that, frankly, that gravy train, of senior officials being able to negotiate extraordinary packages and then move on, that needs to be dealt with by the law. But probably where I would challenge actually some of the thinking here about this particular council and the pictures you showed. I mean, yes, it does look like a Google or any other, West Coast American firm. But what's wrong with that? I mean, at the end of the day, people, whether in the public sector or in the private sector, should have a reasonable working environment. I mean, that looked like a fantastic IKEA studio to me. I mean...
Well, what's wrong with it, Tom, is that they clearly can't manage their budget. It's all well and good. You can do whatever you want. You can make your office gold-plated if you can afford it, but evidently they can't.
Yeah, but I think, we've got to separate here, ensuring that whether you're in the private sector or in the public sector, good employers making their premises, where people work...
But there's a difference,
nice
Tom. That's, if a private employer wants to spend 30, 40 grand on plastic plants and beanbags, fill your boots. This is a public sector spending yours and my money and then going bust at the end of it.
Well, that's what's egregious here, Michelle, isn't it? Is the fact that this council has actually gone bust, and councils, at the end of the day, deliver vital public services, for adult and social care, for our children, transport, refuse collection. So to have a situation where a council has gone out and spent £30,000 on fake pot plants and then has gone bust, I mean, that is totally unacceptable.
Yeah, and I think over the last decade or so, we've seen that council budgets have been under some pressure.
40% under the Osborne years.
Reductions from central government grants to councils, so they've had to manage with less, and adult social care, as you mentioned, takes up the vast majority of a council budget anyway, so we want to see as much money as possible going towards those services. Yeah,
and there'll be council taxpayers watching this programme who've had to swallow, on average, a 4 to 5% increase in their local council tax this year, and they'll look at photographs like that and say, this is excess.